Today we're going to be talking about the basic configuration and operation of IBM 5150 emulation in MAME. Let's get right to it. Of course, it was released in 1981, and here's a view of the inside of the machine. It came with one or two floppy drives, and usually some kind of a graphics controller, some kind of a communications controller, and they were all, there were 5 slots in the machine, as shown here on the motherboard. So here we can see the 5 different slots, which in MAME we can configure what goes into those slots. Near the top of the screen, next to the keyboard and cassette connector, there's a socket where a 8087 FPU goes into, and there's also some dip switches, and of course memory. So in MAME we can actually configure all of these things. We can configure the dip switches, we can configure the memory, we can put an FPU in it if we want, we can configure what goes into all of the slots. All of this stuff is configurable in MAME. So now I'm actually going to bring up the emulator, and I want to point out one thing very important about the IBM 5150. Okay, so I'm just going to run this here. MAME, window, IBM 5150. So I'll bring this up. Now, we've got a black screen. Now we've got a blinking cursor. This machine takes a long time to boot up. Just be patient. It's not broken. Okay, we get hard disk error and the disk seek. And because we didn't give it any disks, it goes into basic. So that took a good almost a minute, the exact time I have shown on the timer. So now that we're here, let's jump into the MAME configuration screen, and we can show you about the different slots and configuration options that are available. So this machine comes with CGA in slot 1. Of course, there are 5 slots, as we showed previously. The CGA is in slot 1. A communications adapter, apparently with 2 ports. This is not the standard IBM one, apparently. This is not exactly the IBM one. For the IBM one, it only had one port on it. So this is a dual port card. And COM1 has a mouse in it, COM2 is empty. Slot 3 has an XT floppy controller in it, and it's currently configured for 360K drives, 5¼ inch double density drive. There's an MFM hard drive controller, and there's 1 empty slot. So this is the default configuration, how the machine comes. We'll talk about what you can put into some of these slots. There are a lot of different options here, but this is the basic configuration that the machine comes with. Okay, so I wanted to talk a little bit more about the hardware that's actually inside of the emulated machine. As we said, in ISA slot 1, we have a CGA adapter. This page here is from -0degrees.net, a nice picture of a CGA card. In ISA 2, have an asynchronous communications adapter. And as I said before, the one shown here only has 1 port. There's 1 serial port here. But the one in MAME is actually a dual card that has 2 ports. The third slot is the IBM 5¼ inch disk drive adapter. and it does say that it supports 180 and 360. But it does say here that it does work with 720K disks. They have more information here on -0degrees.net. And the last card, of course, is the IBM fixed disk adapter, which we're going to talk about more in the next episode. One more thing I wanted to talk about the 5150 is the keyboard. Of course, modern laptops don't have the same keyboard layout. The AT101 is not even the same keyboard layout. So there's a couple of things that you need to note about using IBM 5150 emulation. Because of the way that this original keyboard works, you'll have to note the location of home, arrow keys, page up, insert, and delete. They're all in the number pad area. If you don't have a keyboard that has a number pad, you're going to find that the arrow keys don't work. On my Mac, there isn't really an easy way to have an emulated number pad. It's simply going to be easier to have a keyboard, an external keyboard, plugged in on your USB port through an adapter that actually has a number pad, because you will have to use the number pad in order to enter the arrow keys, home, page up, page down, even Control-Alt-Delete. If you use an AT keyboard and you type Control-Alt-Delete, that's not the right delete key. You need the one that's under the period. Okay, I just wanted to note this as something important, that I recommend using an external keyboard or one that has a number pad function so that you can get access to the arrow keys. We can also change the dip switches as shown here. We showed the picture of the motherboard. You can change the options here. 5150 motherboard, boot from floppy, just as an example, yes. And it even highlights which switch changes as you change this. No, I don't want to boot from floppy. Yes, no, yes. Same thing with the RAM size, the color graphics adapter, number of floppy drives, RAM size, and the unused switch, which don't know exactly what that does. The other thing I wanted to point out is we have jumper settings for what kind of hard drive is attached. You can have 4 different hard drive types. So I'm not going to explain that in this video. I'm actually going to have a part 2 where I specifically talk about how to set up and configure this MFM hard drive controller, because that is a little bit of a longer topic. So these are the basic configuration settings that you can make inside of MAME. First, let's talk about slots. And in order to do that, I'm going to switch to a different screen. Okay, so we're going to run MAME IBM 5150 list slots. Okay, and if we just look at this first screen, these are all the different kinds of adapters that we can actually plug into any of the slots, or the 5th slot. You can have a MDA adapter in the 2nd slot. Yes, the machine supported CGA and MDA at the same time. We already have an HDC. We already have a CGA. If you so desired, you can use an XT IDE instead of the MFM controller. Again, the default configuration everybody is going to have without reconfiguring the thing is the MFM controller, HDC. So if we wanted to, for fun, we could do this. So we could put an MDA adapter in slot 5. And now when we bring this up, whoops, it's actually called ISA 5. Now, you can see that we have 2 different screens. You can't see that yet. this left screen over here is the CGA adapter. This right screen over here is the MDA. Okay, this is just an example. So let's talk about the floppy disk controller. The default configuration, as I said before, is 5¼ inch double density. Because this is a older controller, it does not support high density at all. You cannot use 1.2 or 1.44 disks with this particular controller. You could change it to a different controller that does and has the ROM that supports it. The only other option that we have is we can actually use a 720K 3.5 inch double density floppy drive. So this is important to note that you can use 360 or 720 with this particular controller. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and load an operating system. And somewhere in here we have MS-DOS, PC-DOS, MS-DOS down here, 3.3a is the one that I like to use. And so if we reset the system and wait for it again, eventually this will boot up MS-DOS. And there we go, MS-DOS 3.3a. Alright, so this is what I was going to show in this episode. Keep it short and sweet, very basic. Talk about the emulation, what hardware is available, what the default hardware is. And so in my next video, we're going to talk about the hard disk adapter and understanding the correct way to configure that, how to create hard disk images, because I had to actually spend some time learning about the hardware and the emulation to figure out how to do that. So that's why that's going to be a separate episode. That'll be the second one in the IBM5150 series. And I think the third one in the IBM5150 series is we're actually going to install FreeDOS onto a hard drive. We're going to use the one that came from Tech Tangents. So that'll be the interesting third part of the 5150 video series. So thanks for watching. Bye everyone.